What if the financial collapse you fear most isn't coming in the future? It's already happening right now, in slow motion, and you're too busy to notice. That's not a metaphor. That's the financial reality of millions of people who, by every visible measure, appear to be doing fine. They have jobs, they have homes, they have phones, cars, vacations, and a social media feed that projects stability. But underneath the surface, the structure is cracking, the margins are shrinking, the emergency fund doesn't exist. The credit card balance carries a little more weight each month, and the distance between their current life and total financial collapse is measured not in years, but in one missed paycheck. Here's the belief I want to destroy in the next few minutes, that financial collapse is something that happens to other people, to the reckless, to the irresponsible, to those who made obviously bad decisions. The truth is far more disturbing. Most financial collapses don't announce themselves. They don't arrive with sirens and warning signs. They build quietly, beneath the surface, in the gap between what you earn and what you owe, in the habits you repeat without examining, in the system you never built because you assumed the absence of crisis meant the presence of security. And that assumption, that silence equals safety, is the most expensive mistake a person can make with their financial life. Meet Diana. Diana is 38 years old. She has a good job in middle. Management, earns a salary most of her friends would envy, and has never in her adult life missed a single bill payment. She considers herself financially responsible. She doesn't gamble. She doesn't make wild investments. She's cautious, practical, and sensible with money, or so she believes. What Diana doesn't see is this. She has 4 months of expenses on a credit card she hasn't paid in full since 2021. Her car is financed until 2028. She has no emergency reserve. She had one, but used it during a home repair last year and never rebuilt it. Her retirement contributions are minimal, paused twice in the last 3 years when money got tight. She has life insurance, but no disability coverage. Her income is her only financial pillar, and that pillar is one corporate restructuring, one health crisis, or one unexpected economic shock away from collapsing entirely. Diana is not irresponsible. Diana is unprotected, and there is a profound and devastating difference between those two things. This is what I call the illusion of financial functioning, the state in which a person pays their bills on time, maintains a lifestyle that signals stability, and operates under the continuous assumption that because nothing has broken yet, nothing will break. It is perhaps the most dangerous financial state a person can occupy, precisely because it feels safe. The absence of collapse is mistaken for the presence of resilience, but resilience is not the same as luck, not having run out. Yet, Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater Associates and one of the most sophisticated macroeconomic thinkers alive, has spent decades studying how systems fail. His conclusion is consistent across personal finance, corporations, and entire economies. Systems don't fail because of single catastrophic events. They fail because of accumulated vulnerabilities that were never addressed during the periods of calm. The storm doesn't create the weakness. It merely reveals the weakness that was already there. Diana's financial system is full of unaddressed vulnerabilities, and the moment the storm arrives, and it always arrives, what felt like stability will dissolve with terrifying speed. The concept I want to give you today is what I call the architecture of financial resistance. Not wealth maximization, not aggressive investing, not becoming rich next year. I'm talking about something more fundamental and more urgent. Building a financial structure that does not collapse when reality stops cooperating. Because reality will stop cooperating. The only question is whether your financial life is designed to survive it. The first layer is what I call the vulnerability audit. Before you can protect yourself, you must be willing to see yourself clearly. This is harder than it sounds because most people have developed sophisticated psychological mechanisms to avoid examining their real financial position. We round up the savings. We round down the debt. We tell ourselves, the credit card balance is temporary. The lack of emergency fund is a phase. The absence of investments is something we'll address next quarter. Charlie Munger called this tendency the first-rate intelligence using itself to justify what the emotions already want to believe. It is, in the financial context, the mind convincing itself that the cracks in the foundation are cosmetic when they are structural. A vulnerability audit means sitting down, with complete honesty, without emotional defense, and mapping every point at which your financial life could break. Ask these questions without flinching. If I lost my income tomorrow, how many days until I couldn't pay my obligations? What is my actual total debt, including every credit card, every installment, every informal loan? What percentage of my monthly income leaves before I have any choice about it? What would a medical emergency, a car failure, or a home repair cost me? And where exactly would that money come from? Most people have never answered these questions with full honesty. The act of answering them is itself a form of financial protection because you cannot defend against vulnerabilities you refuse to acknowledge. The second layer is the emergency reserve as a non-negotiable. I want to be direct here because this point is so consistently underestimated that it deserves no diplomatic softening. The absence of an emergency fund is not a minor financial gap. It is a structural failure. It is the equivalent of building a house without a foundation and being surprised when the first heavy rain causes damage. Warren Buffett's famous principle, never interrupt compounding unnecessarily, applies here in reverse. Every financial emergency that forces you to liquidate investments, take on debt, or disrupt your financial system at a moment of vulnerability is a compounding interruption with costs that extend years beyond the emergency itself. The credit card balance acquired during a crisis carries interest for months. The investment withdrawn at the wrong moment misses the subsequent recovery. The debt taken on in panic accumulates precisely when your capacity to repay is lowest. The emergency fund is not a saving strategy. It is an insurance policy against the financial cascade. 3 to 6 months of essential expenses, liquid, untouchable except for genuine emergencies, is the first and most critical layer of financial protection. Not because emergencies are frequent, but because when they arrive without warning, without sympathy, and with the capacity to transform a temporary crisis into a permanent financial scar. The third layer is what I call structural debt surgery. Not all debt is equal, and not all debt management strategies are equal. But there is a category of debt that functions like a slow financial hemorrhage, consumer debt, particularly high-interest revolving credit, that grows faster than most people's ability to earn. The person who carries a significant credit card balance is not merely paying for past purchases. They are paying a premium of 15 to 30% per year for the privilege of having spent money they didn't have. That premium compounds. It accumulates. It creates a permanent drag on every financial decision they make thereafter. Benjamin Graham, the intellectual architect of modern value investing and the mentor of Warren Buffett himself, understood that the preservation of capital, the defense against loss, is always more important than the pursuit of gains. In personal finance, this principle translates directly. Eliminating high-interest debt is the highest guaranteed return available to most people. A person paying 22% interest on a credit card cannot invest their way out of that drag. The math is unambiguous. The debt must be addressed surgically, systematically, and with the same urgency applied to any structural threat. This means creating a clear hierarchy: minimum, Payments on all obligations, then the maximum possible allocation toward the highest interest debt until it is eliminated, then moving down the list. Not elegantly, not comfortably, with the focused aggression of someone who understands that every month the hemorrhage continues, the structural damage deepens. The fourth layer is the income diversification imperative. Single income dependency is one of the most overlooked financial vulnerabilities in modern life. We have been culturally programmed to think of a stable job as security, and in certain eras and certain contexts, that programming had some validity. Today, in an economy defined by technological disruption, corporate restructuring, automation, and market volatility, the single income earner is structurally exposed in ways that were not true for previous generations. Naval Ravikant's framework here is illuminating. True financial security does not come from a job. It comes from leverage, from owning skills, assets, or equity that generate value independently of any single employer's decision. This does not mean everyone needs to become an entrepreneur tomorrow. It means that the intelligent financial actor actively develops secondary income streams, whether through investments, freelance skills, intellectual property, or small ownership stakes in value-generating assets that reduce dependency on any single economic pillar. Diana's entire financial structure rests on one pillar, one company's decision, one economic cycle, one health event. The architecture of financial resistance requires multiple pillars, not for wealth maximization, but for survival against the vulnerabilities that a single pillar structure cannot withstand. The fifth layer is the insurance gap analysis. This is perhaps the least glamorous aspect of financial protection and, correspondingly, the most ignored. Insurance is not an investment. It does not generate returns. It does not make you wealthy. It does exactly one thing. It prevents a specific category of catastrophic event from destroying everything you have built. And that function, in the architecture of financial resistance, is irreplaceable. Most people are inadequately insured in ways they have never carefully examined. They have health insurance, but no disability coverage, despite the statistical reality that a working-age adult is far more likely to experience a disabling illness or injury than to die prematurely. They have life insurance, but no income protection. They have car insurance, but no umbrella liability coverage. They assume that because they have some insurance, the catastrophic scenarios are covered without ever examining the specific gaps between what they have and what they actually need. The insurance gap analysis is simple. For each major category of risk, health, income, life, property, liability, map what would actually happen financially if that risk materialized, and evaluate whether your current coverage would be sufficient to prevent permanent financial damage. Where the answer is no, the gap is a vulnerability, and vulnerabilities, as Dalio reminds us, are not neutralized by the absence of the storm. They are merely waiting for it. Now, let me address the resistance I know is rising in your mind right now, because I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, I know I need an emergency fund, but the money isn't there. I know the credit card is a problem, but the expenses are real. I know I need to diversify my income, but I'm already exhausted. Life is expensive, and the margin simply isn't there. And I won't tell you those pressures aren't real. They are. The cost of living is real. The exhaustion is real. The feeling that there's no room to maneuver is one of the most common and most paralyzing financial experiences a person can have. I am not dismissing it, but I need you to consider the alternative calculation. Because the cost of not building financial resistance is not zero. It is enormous. And it is paid at the worst possible moment. The emergency fund you never built will be replaced by credit card debt that costs you twice as much and takes 3 years to pay off. The income you never diversified will leave you negotiating from desperation when your employer knows you have no options. The vulnerabilities you chose not to examine will be examined for you by circumstances at a time of their choosing rather than yours. The financial collapse doesn't care that you were busy. It doesn't care that conditions were difficult. It arrives when it arrives, and it finds the vulnerabilities that were always there. The transformation I want you to carry out of this video is this. Stop measuring your financial health by whether things are currently working. Start measuring it by whether your financial structure can survive things stopping working, because the absence of crisis is not the same as the presence of resilience. And the time to build resilience is always before you need it. The architecture of financial resistance is not built in a dramatic moment of financial awakening. It is built in the small, consistent, unglamorous decisions made during the periods of calm. The emergency fund contribution that doesn't feel urgent, the debt payment that feels punishing, the insurance gap addressed when nothing is currently wrong, the vulnerability audit conducted before the storm arrives. Every structure that survives pressure was designed to survive pressure before the pressure came. Type in the comments right now, I am building my resistance, not for the algorithm, for yourself, as a commitment to the version of your financial life that doesn't collapse when reality stops cooperating. Subscribe if you want to go deeper. This channel exists for one reason, to give you the frameworks and the mindset to build a financial life that is genuinely resilient, not merely functional on a good day. Real wealth is not just accumulation. It is protection. It is design. It is a structure built with the explicit knowledge that conditions will change and the quiet confidence that when they do, you will still be standing. The collapse won't announce itself, but the resistance you build today will.